Hey guys, my name is Rai. Today I wanted to go back and revisit some Oomdge content, which is pretty highly requested, as I've been really enjoying my balanced Druid. But specifically, I wanted to walk through today how I did my plus 20 Floodgate in a one-shot with a Frost Mage and a Frost DK. This is the quote-unquote Winter's Coming comp that these two players are playing their favorite specs. So as you can see, some familiar faces in here. We have Clemens, we have MOMA, we have Hollow, who the Floodgate is now timeable for, and Frost Strike, our Frost DK friend. In this dungeon, I'm going to be showing you what I did well, what I think I didn't do well, and how I calibrated myself to deal with not playing with an Arcane Mage or an Unholy DK in this rather AoE heavy keystone. I do have to change my gameplay and my sends a little bit because now we do not revolve around a minute 50 cooldowns. In the traditional Arcane Mage Unholy comp, DT, as well as, Arcane Surge, we're looking around sending at the 130 mark. However, with Frost Mage, we are now on a 2-minute cooldown, and with a Frost DK running Breath, we're also on a 2-minute cooldown around him. My gameplay has to change considerably as my use of Incarns might change, and I'm going to have to be focusing on hitting the right mobs and that priority damage. In this first bowl, I'm going to be walking you through how exactly I gathered this, how I, made sure that I dotted everything appropriately and didn't pull these shredders. One mistake I do see Boomkins do is they start moonfiring these hyenas and soldiers too early, they proc a mushroom from their tier set on the back, and then those snipers pull in. So I do wait a couple globals here as I get everything dotted, and as well I'm dotting all these contractors as they come in before even hitting that Incarn. I hit that Sunfire, I hit my Fury of Elune, and immediately I'm into that Incarn. Notice how I haven't used Warrior of Elune until I've spent those 2 stacks of Nature's Grace, as they're going to reduce the cast time of my next 2 Starfires or Wraths by 40%. I am watching carefully for that Throw Dynamite, which I do get doubled right away and hit that Bark Skin. If I do get double Throw Dynamite again, I will be hitting that Shadow Melt. Please pay close attention here too that I'm hitting the Shredder in this pull, and I use 2 charges of Incarnation. As I don't have an Unholy DK, my profile for my team is a little bit different, so sending 2 Incarn here is my prerogative. I did make one mistake there, and I started, thinking about resending that Fury. I always try to resend Fury of Elune as much as possible, just because it's going to be getting a cooldown reduction when going into the next pack. So see here, by the time I even get into the next pack and have everything dotted, I have Fury of Elune back up. I dot the Scaffolding, dot the Architect, go into Eclipse as soon as I possibly can, and get everything dotted. Where this pull goes wrong is that our Priest Healer dies right off the gate, and before I can even get a Battle Res on him, he did release. Well, that's a problem here is now that we are actually really scared. I have to Shadow Meld the Throw Dynamite, Sit in Bear, Frenzied Regen, top myself up with Health Pots, Renewal, and I managed to somehow stay alive. However, our team is in dire shambles and our Priest Healer's just getting back. This definitely threw us off a little bit and reduced our damage quite a bit on this pull, but I did get everything set up, and most importantly, here we all lived. Now that our healer's back, I don't have to sit in bear form. I can hit that Incarn as it just come up with my Host of Guards, and make sure I'm just, slamming that Starfall, not overcapping on Fury, and hitting the Architect. Remember too that I'm always hitting the Architects, the Shredders, and any priority mob in here because I have no Arcane Mage. It is absolutely my imperative to make sure that these things are dying as quickly as they can before everything else, or else we're going to be spending ample time just fighting this Architect at the end, which we even do here. I think this would have died a little bit quicker if our Priest didn't go down when he did. It made me definitely play a little bit more defensive and have to delay my send, but that's okay as we do recover, and it was more a miracle that we did manage to survive this pull without everybody dying. One trick to note here is I'm always making sure that I enter into Eclipse when I'm just dotting 1 or 2 mobs. If I have nothing else to do and my mobs are dotted already, there's absolutely no reason why I just shouldn't go into Eclipse and start spending those Starfalls as to not overcap. Again, I send Fury of Elune, I have that Firmament proc, and as well I'm spinning that Nature's Grace before I hit that Warrior of Elune. Again, just hitting the Architect here, and I'm looking to see if I need to Solar Beam either of the Harpooners. I go into my next Eclipse, and again, you'll see there I spend that Nature's Grace, and I'm just keeping Fury on cooldown. Whenever the scaffolding comes out, it depends on your composition what you really want to do with it. I end up always dotting it, but the real approach, I think that the best solution is always just making sure you just hit a Sunfire on it and cleave it down. You can swap targets for a little bit, but I think in this composition, because again, I didn't have that Arcane Surge blowing up one target, I want to make sure that this Architect comes down and I'm putting as much damage as I can into it. As you see here, I did start sitting on that next Incarn. Why I'm banking that Incarn in that house is because my timings are going to be a lot better if I don't resend here. The next pull in the dungeon is the boss with a little bit of funnel, and as well I want to make sure that I have at least 2 Incarns for that boss, and an Incarn for the pull after, as well as 2 going into Big Mama. We do end up skipping these Shreddinators as I get out of Moon Conform to Wild Charge to my Priest. He's going to be double gripping both our team members up here, and our Demon Hunter is going to be setting us up with some funnel. I'm going to show you guys a couple tips on this fight of how to best do this, I think, personally. I was trying to figure out, like, hey, like, how do I maximize my damage on duo, especially to do with cleave? We don't really have any significant funnel specs in here. Frost DK does get a little bit of funnel, but ultimately, right, like, I just want these things dead. The Surveyor is actually really deadly, and as we pull this into boss, any combination of Quick Shot plus throw Dynamite is going to kill off my team. I enter into that Eclipse, I hit that Incarn, and I'm going to be hinting Bront for a majority of this encounter. Hitting Bront is going to be my prerogative because these 2 bosses are going to jump away, and Bront has a lot more health. Again, too, our profile is a little bit different, and our priority class now, which is our Frost DK, is going to be, you know, in melee, so he's not always going to be able to hit Bront the way that the rest of the team can. I do want to swap off a little bit here and hit the other boss, as well as try to get down that Surveyor. I think one important thing that we talked about is this Surveyor can't actually live forever. It can get kind of deadly, as again, any combination of Quick Shot plus that throw Dynamite can easily take out a team member. But as much as I can, I want to be hitting Bront and then just moving very carefully for the lines. If I'm ever targeted with that explosion, I want to make sure I'm either hitting Barkskin or Bear Form, or even both if the Surveyor is still alive. As the Surveyor is about to go down, again, I'm just putting myself in a position where I'm safe throughout this room. Overall, there's nothing too crazy here, but you'll see that I immediately go into that Barkskin, and I'm back to hitting the boss. My whole goal on Balanced Druid is trying to avoid hitting Bear as much as possible, but knowing that sometimes I am going to have to hit it to make sure that my team can, you know, or my Priest can keep me alive. It's really important that my Priest, you know, is looking after me, but I'm also have to be cognizant, and you can't see this in the corner, but I have a absorb tracker for my powered shield right below my stream chat cover. So anytime that I think I need to Bear Form, I'm just watching that absorb very carefully, which shows me the total number of the absorb value on my character. This can get to be probably one of the most important things that you do on Balanced Druid, as you're always going to be wanting to make sure that if you're not going to Bear Form, you have some sort of absorb to handle any one-shot in these encounters. As you'll see here, I'm starting to sit on those Incarn charges. Knowing again my team's damage profile, I want to make sure I have an Incarn for the next pack, and as well I have 2 Incarns ready for Big Mama in case anything goes wrong. Overall, our boss stam with this composition is actually pretty insane. I think Frost Mage and Frost DK do some pretty insane boss stam. So fights like this go pretty quick, and you can see that, you know, we're only 243 into combat, and this ends up being just over a 3-minute encounter on +20. Nothing too crazy here, nothing too special, nothing too spicy, but this boss does go down pretty evenly, and we're going to be going off to the Demolitionist Bowl before Big Mama. Again, anytime these boss encounters end, I don't really care about sending or holding my Fury. I just want to send it and get it on cooldown as quickly as I can. I go into my travel form here, I hit that Wild Charge, and I want to get up here as quickly as possible. One of the things I'm looking to do is rooting this patrol. If the patrol's really bad, I want to root it in a position that makes it and enables my Demon Hunter to be able to group more quickly. But my Demon Hunter is going to be pulling a bomb here in a second and pulling in 1 additional crab into us in this bowl. Luckily, I don't actually need to root it because the pat was pretty bad. So what we're going to be doing here is just pulling this all together and just sending it together. Again, Demon Hunter's pulling one bomb here, and he's going to be going up to the left and pulling this from the left-hand side. As we grab these soldiers, these inspectors, I end up getting triple shot by these snipers, so I do end up hitting that Typhoon. I'm going to be dotting every single mob in this pack and hitting that Incarn. Unfortunately, these mobs jump around quite a bit, and I had a little bit of a tough time with dotting them, but as soon as they're all dotted, I hit that beam, I go into Incarn, I'm spending those Nature's Grace charges, and as well, when that's done, I'm hitting that Warrior of Elune. I would say that I actually shouldn't be hitting the Demolitionist here. I think that the better target is actually the Inspectors, as they have the most health and they do jump out. But a problem with the Inspectors is that you're going to be losing a ton of damage if you're hitting them if they're not stacked in. I do use Vortex here for a Frost DK send, which does help a little bit, but ultimately what I think I should be doing is hitting these Inspectors. We do a little bit of a sloppy job with these reloads right off the gate, but we do recover a little bit at the end with our mage stops. Playing with Frost Mage is a little bit daunting, as well as, you know, my FPS kind of gets shot in the head with all his frost orbs going out. I'm really looking forward to next patch when Blizzard does implement the setting in the game which reduces or allows you to reduce the clutter of other player spells. I have a pretty good computer for all intents and purposes, and every time I'm in Floodgate I lag already, and then I play with Frost Mage, and then I really lag. But you'll see here that I have one charge of Incarn, but another one coming up in 25 seconds, which means that for Big Mama, I can go into this encounter with 2. I want to be dotting all these mobs right away before I even consider Incarning though, and as well I want to be dotting all the Mechadrones and Big Mama before we start the encounter. Again, Moonfire, Moonfire, Moonfire. Go into Eclipse. I wait to Sunfire till everything's stacked. I hit Incarn, Fury of Elune. Unfortunately, I don't have Combat Pod available to me yet, but I will be blasting the boss. Mistake I think I actually made here is I think in Bloodlust I should have been sending that second charge of Incarn. Remember, I'm playing with a Frost DK, and over on the left hand side of the screen you can see that he did not have breath right away on pull, but he will be sending it here in the tail end of Bloodlust. In most scenarios, I only ever hit one charge of Incarnation on the start here with Arcane Mage and Unholy DK because their damage will cover the rest, and I can just constantly sit on Incarn charges throughout the encounter. That means that I can always hit an Incarn at the start of every ad phase, and I have a backup one for the trash pull after this, which again ended up being okay. But I think here too, right, like this first set died a little bit slower, and now we're gonna have to deal with the jumpstart. When the jumpstart happens, I'm gonna be using Barkskin every single time, pulling Astral Power, hitting Warrior where I can, and making sure I'm in Eclipse. Remember, the boss takes an increased amount of damage when in that jumpstart, so I want to make sure that I'm still doing as much single target damage as possible, dropping the Starfall and just Starsurge in. You'll see at the end of this encounter, I have to be very, very ethical about my Starsurge, and I have to stop padding completely in order to kill off this boss. If you haven't seen this strategy yet, this has been employed by most teams I've seen both in NA and EU, and what we're doing is stacking in a corner so that these Mechadrones pencil stack on us and we can cleave them down easily. This is a little bit of a cheese, but at this point it does make Big Mama a lot easier, exponentially easier, so I think most teams are doing this now. Unfortunately, it makes the boss a little bit more boring, but what we do have to be very, very careful of is that if you get these charged focused shots on you, the disc, you need to get out of the party and immediately get back in. You'll see that at the end of the next part of the boss fight, I have to do a pretty crazy wild charge, get out of the boss encounter, and stack back in as quickly as possible. I am doing quite a bit of damage on this boss, despite, only incarnating once in Bloodlust. But, we do have to kind of empty the bag here as I get a little bit scared. I do hit that renewal, I am hitting those Starsurges, and I'm just hitting Warrior on cooldown. We do have a couple more trash mobs coming in here, I hit that Roar, and we're going to be stacked in the corner. Once these Mechadrones come in, I'm going to be dotting absolutely everything, and then hitting Sunfire, and then going back to blasting the boss. I think this fight is actually pretty easy on Boomkin in the first place. I don't think it's like that complicated, but your sends are really important. How you play this fight on Owl can, you know, make or break the entire encounter, as a lot of your damage is covering killing off all of these Mecha drones. If you don't have an Incarn for any one of these sets, it is very possible that you fall behind, and as you see here, again too, every single set I save an Incarn for. I'm pairing it up with that Fury of a Loon, that Warrior, and as well, I think this one I combat botted, or maybe it was the last one, but here I do end up swapping off to the ad set a little bit, as on this ad set my DK did not have that Breath of Sintragosa. I'm a little bit scared here, as I'm just getting every mechanic, every shot, I get the focus, I Wildbound out, and I'm back to blasting the boss. Again, as we go into the face here, I'm a little bit scared this time, but I did get pain suppression from my Disc Priest, which can be seen at the bottom of my screen here. As the boss is sub 500 million, I know now that I need to be Starsurging. If I hit Starfall here, I'm absolutely padding and doing my team a disservice. So one of the things I talk a lot about in all the specs I play is your damage profile absolutely matters. Way too many specs here. I've seen, you know, I played with a Balanced Druid in a 20 on my BDH, and I was about to lose my absolute mind when the boss is at 250 mil and he's hitting Starfall, man. And, you know, what do we get? We get the kill blockade and we wipes the encounter. This is no different for if you're playing with Rep Paladin or if you're playing with Dev Evoker or Destro Warlock. At this point, you have to kind of use your brain a little bit and make sure you're hitting the right buttons and thinking about what your goal is as a team. Me hitting Starfall here would be so counterproductive to my team's success that, you know, we probably just would have wiped. But look how close the shield is anyway. We do manage to kill off the blockade right before it, you know, pops. But one of the things I did do there was I held on to that Incarn. My team did have 2-minute CDs going in there, and we had that Breath of Sintragosa as well as Reaper's Mark. So now I'm waiting for my tank to do the skip. I'm sitting on 2 charges of Incarn, which is actually kind of annoying. I really hate sitting on 2 charges of Incarn. But again, my goal in this composition is I need to be the big damage dealer when my team does not have damage, right? I need to be pressing my house, my pots, my Incarn when my team does not have damage, because again, we're not on that 150 timer. Going in here, I dot absolutely everything, get those Sunfires off, and I end up Sunfiring a couple times here because I think it's actually worth it because the mobs come in really late. I hit Visual, again, I'm hitting those, you know, Starfalls, and I'm waiting to spend that Warrior of a Loon until my Nature's Grace fades. Again, I need to be hitting the Blood Warper here. Me hitting anything else could delay our team's progress and could actually end up killing us, right? So I want to make sure that I'm using Vortex stops on the Demolitionist, looking to beam where I can, and making sure that I'm killing off this Blood Diffuser. I do end up hitting a Shadow Melt a little bit earlier there to make sure that I didn't get the overlap of Shot and Blood Warp. And I think that's a really important tip too. I think on these encounters, specifically when you're dealing with this Demolitionist, Sniper, and this Blood Warper, this bull can be really deranged and can set you back. Look to get a good Shadow Melt here on maybe one of the quick shots from the Sniper, or if you're getting hit by anything. It can save you, especially too when that Blood Warper AoE is out. It can be the difference between you living or dying on some of these pulls. As you'll see here, I'm going to do another trick which I learned from some of the big boomies, is that I want to actually go into stealth, go into cat form, and as soon as my tank starts to gather the scalp, I am going to be opening this bomb pile. This lets us save a valuable 15 seconds from dealing with the swamp base RP, so now that I have it out of the way now, I'm going to be dotting up all these mobs and we're going to be killing them. I will be sending an Incarn here, and then we'll be going into swamp base. Again, Incarn, House of Guards, Starfall, 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 Starfall. You want to best avoid using your stops if your team can help it while you're pressing Incarn, but sometimes it does just happen, and you have to be in a state of, you know, awareness that sometimes you might just need to hit that in, or that's, you know, Incapacitating Roar, Vortex Push, or any other buttons to make sure that your team doesn't go down to these Jettison Kelp. Again here, I'm watching as we're always calling 1-stop, 2-stop as I hit that, Incapacitating Roar, and this pack is almost dead. I think this route is actually crazy fast, and you can see now that even when this dies, it's not like we have to wait for Swamp Face. We're going to be able to go right away, and we're going to be pulling some divers into the boss. So here's the conundrum. These divers, typically I would only, Starsurge the boss and I would never touch these, but we don't have any real meaningful funnel class here and our DK doesn't have breath up, so I end up asking my team what they'd like me to do here if I want to be Starfalling or Starsurging. In most cases and scenarios, you should be Starsurging here if you're playing with an Arcane Mage or any class that benefits from funnel, as these divers don't do much, all they do is kick. We're going to be moving in a circle clockwise around the room with these divers to make sure that we don't get hit by these bombs. But you're going to just be seeing here that I want to kill these off as quickly as possible, as they do pose a little bit of a threat for my tank. Again, I think that the real play here is to be Starsurging. I don't think that, your team's ever in danger keeping these alive, right? Like, sure, you add a little bit of difficulty to the encounter by having to kick, but like all we're doing is moving left, right? Like, we're not doing anything so impactful that it's going to be killing off our team. So we do end up, AoEing these down, hitting darkness here, and I do, get a little bit unlucky, get that one Rushing Tides tick and going down here. What really sucks about me going down here is now our healer has the Thorns. I'll be really safe on this set, but as well, our healer now has to heal himself. This does end up being kind of nice for me, as, I don't have to be too scared here, but as we go into Bloodlust, I am going to be waiting to send that next Incarn until those divers come in. In addition to this, I held Barkskin here as I don't need it on this form of the AoE, but I will need it on the next one. I am still holding that Incarn for the divers to come in, but I think the pat was kind of bad, so we didn't pull them in right away. As we're looking here, again, I'm dotting these things up. I only have 10 seconds left of Bloodlust, which kind of sucks, but I do end up hitting that Incarn and starting to get as much damage out as I can. I do unfortunately miss a diver with that, Sunfire, so I did have to also waste a global in Bloodlust for that, dot, which kind of sucks. I think the ideal goal is, you never want to be dotting in Incarn, but shit does happen, and even if you have to, I think it's way more value to get that dot out after, as long as you're not capping on Incarn or Astral Power, than it is to, not dot something up while you're in Incarn. Another trick too is you could just save your dots for a second and do it while you're moving, right? Like, if you just want to be Starfalling or Starsurging the boss, right? You could just be dotting while you're moving here, as I'm going back to actually just, Starsurging. I do weave a little bit of Starfall, Starsurge in here for a little bit more boss stam, as, we do decide at this point that our timer is really good. I think we'd still time this with a minute and a half left if we have a good run. So from here on out, I'm, finishing off these ads, getting rid of any risk that we have with Starfall, and I'll be going back to blasting the boss. Again, what a weird conundrum I'm in here on my Boomkin is I do have House of Cards and no best in slots, so I do end up having to have some weird Incarn sends because I'm waiting to send it with House. But otherwise, again too, this was my first stab at this key playing this composition, so I probably think I could have better sends next time if we played again. I think we'd also have to change the route a little bit to make it a little bit more friendly for our Frost DK, as he didn't have his Breath of Sindragosa up on some pretty important pulls. As we finish off the boss here, we're at 77.66%, which means we are good to go. We do have to fight Double Jump Starter at the end, but we're going to be doing the bubble skip here and chaining pretty quickly throughout the rest of this dungeon. As we go in here, if you've watched my video on Demon Hunter, how we did Floodgates, we're going to be showing you how we skipped Bubbles. Bubbles is going to be dragged back in the corner after he does his yell, and we're going to be running through up on the right. I don't actually get a combat indicator here, but my nameplate color did change, so I end up just committing Shadow Meld anyway. Not the big of a deal. Most importantly here, I did try to resend that Eclipse at the end of Swamp Face to get my Firmament proc. This actually is quite a bit of, free damage if you're just making sure that you enter into Eclipse at the start before you actually Incarn. So even though I'm capping right now, I still have that Firmament proc as well, and I think I do have Combat Pod available. I'm dotting absolutely everything up here. My Demon Hunter is going to be hitting that Grip Sigil. I am going to be beaming, and as well, I go into that Incarn. I do make a mistake here as I Incarn too early, and, I didn't have all my dots out, but, that's okay, as I do manage to get most of my damage out. My Frost DK actually just hard carries this pull. If you look at the damage meter on the bottom left, he's doing close to 20 million, and I think he peaked at 25. So my send was even a little bit futile here. I don't even think I really helped do anything on this pull. I was doing about boomy damage. Maybe I could have done a little bit more if I got my dots better in the opener, but kind of is what it is. I think I played actually a lot worse in the back half of this dungeon than I did the front half. But again, this was my first boomy key of the day. New comp, new strategy, and I was just surprised we one-shot this keystone, so. Again, dotting up all these inspectors and these contractors here, the jump starters and the electricians, and we're going to be looking for that grip beam. You'll notice that any time ever that my Demon Hunter commits that Sigil of Chains, I am just looking to beam out. That's because the Sigil of Chains and Solar Beam have a very similar cooldown. You can be talenting into Solar Beam reduction in the balance tree for 15 seconds if you successfully interrupt a cast, but there's absolutely no reason to not wait a couple seconds to hit that Solar Beam for chains, as all the mobs are going to be grouped up perfectly and they're all going to get that 8-second silence. Again, pay close attention to what I'm hitting here. I'm hitting the jump starter, I'm not hitting the other mobs, I'm not hitting the inspectors, and I'm just making sure I'm resending that Incarn as our damage is a little bit light. This pack is very, very, very healthy, and I need to be making sure that I'm killing everything off so that my team doesn't go down. Unfortunately, my stops did get called there during my Incarn, but I think it's more important again that I got those stops off rather than my team die to casts. We're waiting for my Priest Healer to get stable a little bit before going into the jump starter pull, and we are going to be focusing down one of these jump starters. Again, I go into Eclipse before these two jump starters are together because they're not perfectly stacked yet, and I can't get that Sunfire off right away or else be pressing it twice. The double jump starter pull is very fast and efficient compared to playing like the Shreddinator pull, but it is very, very scary, and you need to be making sure that you're communicating with your team when you need to press certain defensives. I always wait to hear Clemens tell me I need to bark before I actually bark, because if he has a lot of healing and needs my bark after, I could be in a state of panic. Here I get a little bit scared. As I sit in bear form for one tick, I hit that frenzied regen and it does end up saving me. But that second jump starter goes down, and now that we're back to 1, I can go back into Eclipse, send that Fury of a Loon, and go back to finishing off this trash pack. Our timer is actually great still, as we're going to have about 5 minutes to go on a boss, which means we can probably time with about a minute left. I think this boss encounter on 20 is usually about 4 minutes, and you're going to be seeing the strategy we employ here. We also wait too, I think, for, a full 20 seconds here to get the RP done, and Clemens to get enough mana as he's completely tapped. Notice here that I do have Firmament for the pull, so I'm going to be going into Eclipse and spending this before I Incarn. I'll be running Vigil here, Fury of Balloon, spending those Nature's Grace charges, going into Warrior Balloon, and absolutely slamming the boss on the opener. In this Keystone, I never actually bark the AoE unless called for. I'm always saving bark for the Gigazap. Other than that, I want to make sure that I'm in a place where I'm never griefing my melee or my tank from our fixates, and making sure if I ever need to, I'm hitting Bear Form, Renewal, or that health pot if I'm in a state of panic. Again, my number one thing is I don't want to sit in bear, so I'm watching that shield tracker, which is under my chat bar on the left, and as well I'm communicating with my healer about when I'm potentially scared. I do happen to avoid that first Gigazap, which means I'm going to be getting one next, and I'm going to be hitting Barkskin. The Barkskin ends up actually overlapping for a couple seconds of the AoE phase, which is kind of nice, but it's not enough that it's going to be able to save me. As you can see here, Barkskin is ticking at the bottom of my screen under my action bars for 3 more seconds, and I think I get 1 tick a bit on this first turbocharge, but that's it. We do commit to darkness on this encounter, and we're making sure that we bait off our healer. The electric lines can actually never go on your healer, so as long as you're not stacked on him and you're in a place and a position where you can just keep hitting the boss, this is your best chance at being able to do this encounter successfully. At this point, I'm going to keep banking those Incarns until we get into Bloodlust in about 1:30, and then spending them to finish off the boss. Doing my whole Incarn bank in this keystone did end up being okay. I think, we did probably lose almost close to an entire Incarn by not being able to spend them when I did. But I was so nervous in this keystone about how to send my cooldowns, as, not playing with Arcane Mage and Unholy DK changed our profile completely. I think overall we did a pretty good job at communicating and coming up with a good route and action plan that was going to be most cohesive for our team. However, again, this was a one-shot. I think we could definitely go back in this key and at least have two minutes left, maybe even more. I think this profile and this composition is actually pretty good in this key, and I actually really enjoyed playing with Frost DK. At the very end there of that AoE, you see I slam that health pot as indicated by my action tracker at the bottom as we got a little bit scared, but I tried to avoid at all costs going into bear form. Again too, I don't want to bark there because if I bark skin that mechanic, I will not have for the Gigazap, and we are going to be in Bloodlust soon. The last thing I ever want to do is be in Bloodlust and Incarn and have to sit in bear. Luckily, we did manage to survive with a little bit of good planning, a little bit of smart thinking, and some good reaction speeds. I do clear my spark, and I know now I'm going to be getting that Gigazap, but Bloodlust is coming up in 10 seconds. I'm about to be sending double Incarn with potion, and the boss is going to be getting deep fried. I am sitting on Fury of Balloon for a second. I go into Eclipse. I Fury, we Bloodlust, I Potion, and right now I'm in Incarn with that Warrior of Balloon, and I'm frying the boss. Remember, I have a second charge of Incarn out of this as well, so I get to use 2 charges of Incarn in Bloodlust, which is going to be immensely helpful, and I'm slamming Fury on cooldown whenever it comes up. As I go into that next Incarn here in a second, I'm going to be finishing off the boss, and the boss is just going to be dying. I do get a pain sub, so I don't have to bear form in that Incarn. I slam that Fury of Balloon, so it expires in that incarnation, and the boss should be dead. I don't even bother clearing my spark at this point, as all my job in the key is done. I did the damage I needed to do, I lived the mechanics, and yeah, overall I think this was a really fun key. I'm glad that I got to be able to play a different composition in here too. I think it's kind of refreshing. As you guys know, I play Preservation Evoker and Brewmaster, so I'm always open to messing around with different specs. Even though Frost Mage kills my game, and all the particle effects definitely slow me down a little bit. Anyway, that's how I timed my plus 20 Floodgates on my Balanced Druid in a one-shot, and I had a lot of fun. If you like this kind of content or want to see more from Oomdge, let me know in the comments. I know a lot of you on my channel are here for that Brewmaster, Preservoker, VDH gameplay, but again, if you want any of my weak auras, my roots, or have any questions about the approaches I take in my keys, feel free to join my Discord or come drop by on Twitch, both linked in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in. Good luck with your keys, good luck on your process of getting Title and Mythic Plus if that's your goal, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.